In March 1987, a pathologist at Drake Memorial Hospital in Cincinnati leaned over the body of a 44-year-old man and noticed something that did not belong. John Powell had survived a motorcycle accident the previous summer, though the crash left him with severe brain injuries. He had been a patient, recovering, dependent on the people around him. And yet, as Dr. Lee D. Lehman conducted the autopsy, he detected the unmistakable scent of cyanide, a poison with no legitimate place at a hospital bedside. That single observation set in motion an investigation that would expose one of the most prolific killers in American history. The man at the center of it was Donald Harvey. Born April 15, 1952 in Hamilton, Ohio, Harvey spent much of his adult life working in hospitals as a nurse's aide, a role that placed him beside the sick, the injured, and the vulnerable. To colleagues and patients, he was a caretaker. But behind that role, Harvey was ending lives, and he had been doing so for years. His crimes stretched back to May 1970. His first known victim was Logan Evans, 88, a patient at Marymount Hospital in London, Kentucky, who was smothered with a pillow. Harvey was just 18. Over the years that followed, he moved between medical facilities, and the deaths followed him. Between 1975 and 1985, he worked at the Cincinnati Veterans Affairs Medical Center, where he later claimed responsibility for at least 15 deaths. He was trusted, he was familiar, and he operated in a setting where death among fragile patients rarely raised suspicion. That was precisely what made his methods so difficult to detect. In a hospital, patients die. Elderly and gravely ill people pass away in their beds every day, and their deaths are logged, mourned, and moved past. Harvey exploited that quiet expectation. He used poisons, including cyanide and arsenic, as well as suffocation, methods that could be mistaken for natural decline. For years, no one looked closely enough to see the pattern hidden inside the ordinary rhythm of hospital loss. After leaving the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in 1985, Harvey was hired at Drake Memorial Hospital in early 1986. It was there, over roughly the following year, that he continued to kill. And it was there, in March 1987, that John Powell became the victim whose death finally broke the pattern. Powell was young by the standards of Harvey's other victims. His death did not fit the easy assumption of natural causes. When Dr. Lehman caught that scent of cyanide during the autopsy, the question became impossible to ignore. How does a recovering accident patient come to be poisoned in his hospital bed? The answer led investigators to Donald Harvey. He was arrested on April 6, 1987. When police searched his apartment, what they found removed any doubt about the scope of what they were dealing with. Inside were jars of cyanide and arsenic. There were books on poisons, and there was a detailed diary, a personal record that documented his acts. This was not a single crime of impulse. It was a chronicle, kept over years, by a man who moved through hospitals with lethal intent. The legal reckoning came in stages. On August 18, 1987, Harvey pleaded guilty in Ohio to 24 counts of aggravated murder, 4 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of felonious assault. Then, in November 1987, he pleaded guilty in Kentucky to 8 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter, receiving 8 life terms plus 20 years there. Across both states, his convictions totaled 28 counts of aggravated murder in Ohio, along with 7 attempted aggravated murder counts and felonious assault, and in Kentucky, 8 murder counts and 1 manslaughter count. In 1987, Harvey pleaded guilty to 37 counts of murder and was sentenced to 28 consecutive life terms in prison, along with $280,000 in fines. 37 confirmed victims. The number earned him a grim nickname in the press, the Angel of Death, a title that captured the terrible inversion of his role. He was placed where he could care for people, and he chose instead to end their lives. Harvey was convicted, and his guilt is not a matter of speculation. He confessed, he pleaded guilty, and the physical evidence recovered from his home, the poisons, the books, the diary, corroborated the scale of his crimes. He entered the prison system to serve out sentences that would keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. For 3 decades, that is where he remained. Then, on March 28, 2017, Donald Harvey was beaten in his cell at the Toledo Correctional Institution. He had been in prison for 30 years. 2 days later, on March 30th, 2017, he died from blunt trauma. He was 64 years old. The man who had spent years dealing death quietly to helpless patients died violently himself, inside the walls, meant to contain him. In September 2019, James Elliott, 45, pleaded guilty to aggravated murder for Harvey's death. He was sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility after 20 years. The Donald Harvey case remains one of the most disturbing chapters in the history of American medical crime, not because of any single dramatic act, but because of how long it went unnoticed. Harvey killed inside institutions built on trust, in settings where the vulnerable are supposed to be safest. His victims were patients who depended on the very people charged with their care. What ultimately exposed him was not a confession or a witness, but the vigilance of a single pathologist who refused to accept a death that didn't add up. That scent of cyanide, caught during a routine autopsy, was the thread that unraveled 17 years of hidden killing. It stands as a lasting reminder of how much the safety of the helpless depends on the attention of those willing to ask why, even when everything around them says not to.